Good evening. I am glad to welcome you to Midnight Bar and Grill. I'm Sam, the owner of this place, and I'm glad you stopped by. Sit back, we have our own special comfort here, which the local public loves so much. When my wife and I conceived of this place, it was just a dream, some scrappy idea, but after a couple of years of hard work and bold decisions, this place became a reality. Yes, we literally built it from scratch 15 years ago, brick by brick, laying out hopes and dreams on this old wooden stand where I stand now. My wife was the light of this entire establishment, a source of sincere energy and inspiration. I think she would be proud of how this place lives and breathes now. May God rest her soul, but here, in midnight, her spirit still hovers. In the clink of glasses, in the laughter of visitors, and in the aromas of hot dishes floating from the kitchen. So, you were on Mr. Bishop's recommendation, right? A good man, an old and faithful friend. He promised a long time ago that you would stop by and maybe want to hear a story or two. Mr. Bishop was not mistaken. Behind the counter, I hear a lot of different things, from boring town gossip to crazy stories about ghosts and lost treasures. People come here with different stories, sometimes so wild that it is difficult to distinguish truth from fiction. Normally, I would keep my mouth shut and not reveal too many secrets, but for the sake of old friend Bishop, an exception can be made. For example, I could tell you about my niece Phoebe. This story turned out to be exciting, I would say. But there, to be honest, I found myself in the denouement itself, and not a participant in all the events, so perhaps we'll put it off for another time. But my other niece, Denise, is a completely different matter. Oh, Denise, this story requires a good dose of imagination and patience, because there are so many twists and turns that it is difficult to believe that this could actually happen. So, if you're ready to listen, order yourself something strong, or, conversely, a warming coffee, and I'll tell you the story of Denise. Hope you enjoy. My niece, Denise Carter, is a woman who is hard to look away from. Her beauty is extraordinary. It captures attention at first sight and remains in the memory for a long time. She is taller than most women, standing 175 centimeters tall without heels, which makes her confident and graceful in a crowd. She has a slender, but at the same time seductively curvaceous figure, which in itself resembles a work of art. Her forms are perfectly expressed, with soft curves that make passers-by involuntarily turn around. Thick hair the color of dark caramel, like a soft cascade, falls onto her shoulders and below, glistening in the light, emphasizing the radiance of her light, velvety skin. Denise has a pretty face with expressive features, large dark eyes with long eyelashes, high cheekbones, and lips that always seem ready to burst into a wide, infectious smile. Her body is not just numbers, but a living embodiment of harmony. There is so much grace in her rounded hips and slender legs that men often get into trouble if they dare to glance too long in her direction. Women, of course, notice such things instantly, and many jealous lovers receive cruel lectures from their companions. Denise knows this, but never uses her beauty for manipulative purposes. Rather, she accepts it with kind irony. She is married to Jeff Carter, a tall and handsome man with a height of 188 centimeters. He carries himself confidently, with the posture characteristic of those who know their worth, and weighs 95 kilograms, remaining fit and slender despite his heavy build. Jeff is a man with a certain aura of strength and determination. His skin is dark and his hair is cut short, which adds to his serious and business-like appearance. He was always a person who was used to achieving his goals and valued order and clarity in life. They had been married to Denise for 10 years, which is an impressive period of time, considering all the intertwining of their destinies. But now, for almost a year, they are separated. 11 long months separate them from each other, and unresolved issues have arisen between them, which seem to permeate every corner of their home. What happened? How did loving spouses end up in such a sad situation? The answer to this question lies in the dramatic events that began with one startling discovery. At the center of this story is the tape that started it all. I keep it with me, but when I listen to it, my heart contracts with tension every time, as if every sound on it comes to life and pulls me back to those difficult days. Jeff gave me a copy of this tape after their lives literally exploded. Yes, the explosion was not just a metaphor, but a very real event that cannot be forgotten. This tape is from a late-morning radio show. Top DJ Rock, or as his official name is Daniel Jerome Rockingham, is a real star of the local radio airwaves. The nickname sounds bright and biting, ideal for the mesmerizing voice that sounds from the radio receivers of thousands of listeners. His show became famous not only for its funny pranks, but also for its unexpected twists that no one was prepared for. DJ Rock and his team made this show so popular that literally everyone knew it. They knew how to mix wit with audacity, causing either laughter or surprise. And it is from this tape, from this radio show, that the first part of our exciting story begins. Hello, Top DJ Rock is with you, and here is today's topic from Tom Jointed Monitoring Programs. Which of your friends' partners would you most like to conquer? I paused the recording to give you more context and help you understand why this story is so important. You see, Denise has always been a bright and full-blooded woman who was not afraid to show her emotions. And when she fell in love with Jeff, it was like an explosion of fireworks in the night sky, unforgettable and dazzling. She met him completely by chance, on one of those ordinary days that suddenly turned into fateful ones. Ha, you should have seen her then. Denise literally flew into my house, all beaming, with such a sparkling look, as if she had just found gold on the street. She couldn't even catch her breath from excitement and choked on words, like a child who had just been told secret news. "Uncle Sam," she screamed, dancing on the spot from the emotions overwhelming her. "I just met my future husband. You won't believe it. He's perfect." Her voice, as I remember, sounded so vivid and shrill that I almost choked on my coffee. I honestly thought she was joking, or maybe she had drunk something like the Scotch whiskey I keep at the bar for particularly desperate clients. But no, she swore that it was love at first sight, real, crazy, beyond any logical explanation. Then she chatted non-stop for an hour, describing every detail of their short meeting, how he smiled at her, how he offered his hand, and how his deep, velvety voice gave her goosebumps. She listed his virtues one after another with such fervor that the room seemed to become hot. I laughed then, like any skeptical adult, sure that this was only a temporary romantic fever. But damn, how wrong I was. Denise was right that time, damn right. Just 18 months later, she and Jeff stood before the altar, vowing eternal love to each other, and it seemed that their union was carved from the marble of fate. And they really were a couple that was nice to watch, the kind that didn't just hold hands, but seemed to convey warmth and confidence to each other. They were happy, smiled from ear to ear, and could laugh together for hours. They loved to have little picnics on the beach, sunbathe, or walk in the park, intertwining their fingers as if they were afraid of losing each other even for a second. Everything seemed perfect, like one of those sweet movies that make people believe in true love. But alas, nothing in this life is immune from sudden storms, even such strong love as theirs. Everything has changed. And now, after 10 years of marriage, something cracked and went awry. Jeff and Denise no longer lived together. A gap had grown between them that had never existed before. What happened left us all in shock, and this is where I bring you. Here, in front of you is this tape, in front of you is this moment of truth, which may make you take a fresh look at their story. Are you listening to DJ Rock? Who's on the line? Hey Rock, this is Denise from the Northwest Side. Hey, Denise. So who is the person you most want to be with? Well, I can say without a doubt that this is my husband's best friend, Mark. There's a chorus of ooh from the show's crew. What? Your husband's best friend, Mark? Oh yes, Rock, this man is just a dream. Is it true? And what is so special about it? Rock, he changes women like you and I change clothes, but none of them is ever offended by him. I even matched him with some of my friends, but they also don't get angry with him and don't say anything bad about him. Everyone says he's just damn good, changing women's clothes, and no one is angry? Oh, he's just the king of Don Juans. All I can say is that when Mark and my husband get together, I can't be around them for a long time. Why? Because if I stay, Then I won't be able to share it with my husband at night. The entire show team bursts out laughing. Denise, girl, what kind of things are these? What, you don't give your husband anything? No, no way. I love my husband, but I'm afraid I'll call him Mark in the heat of the moment. Once again, the show team laughs. Ah, did you seriously say that? I don't believe it. Rock, I'm telling you, he's so handsome. Hey, Denise, aren't you afraid to take risks since you called? After all, your husband can listen to this show. Oh no, he's away for a week. If he had been somewhere nearby, I wouldn't have said a word. Yeah, so as not to call him by someone else's name, I understand. You heard the show's team having fun thanks to her call. I admit, if I heard this for the first time and didn't know that it was my niece Denise, I probably would have laughed too. I myself heard this recording for the first time after everything exploded. It was a slow, lazy Monday night, one of those nights when there are no football matches on and the atmosphere in the bar is as lively as an old dog dozing. There was silence on the streets, interrupted only by the occasional sounds of passing cars, and in the midnight bar and grill only the faint hum of muffled conversations of a couple of regulars could be heard. I was fiddling with the glasses behind the bar, methodically wiping them down to keep myself occupied, when suddenly Denise burst into the bar like a gust of wind and headed straight for my office. The doors swung open with such a roar that I involuntarily froze, holding a still wet glass in my hands. Usually she walked in confidently, but now her steps were fast and impetuous, like those of a person driven by something from within. You know, I always told my nephews and nieces that they can come to me at any time with any problem. Money, problems at work, personal troubles, whatever it is, my door is always open for them. And in this establishment, I always find time for my family. Of course, most often they appeared when they needed money. They asked for a loan until the next salary or for study, for urgent payment for repairs or something like that. Rarely did any of them come for advice, and even more rarely for an alibi, but Denise immediately made it clear that evening that it was not about money at all. I hastily stacked the glasses and, throwing down the bar towel, headed towards the office. The door to my office was still slightly swaying when I pushed it, and a disturbing picture opened before me. Denise was sitting on an old leather sofa that stood in the corner of the office, with her face hidden in her hands. Her shoulders shook, betraying deep emotion, and in the semi-shade of the office, her caramel blonde hair cascaded around her drooping head, hiding her face. The room smelled of coffee and old leather, and this familiar aroma always calmed me, but apparently not her. I approached the sofa carefully, trying not to make a single unnecessary sound, because just by her appearance I realized that something had gone very, very bad. Denise wasn't just upset, she looked like her whole world had just collapsed. I sat down next to her, feeling the trembling in her shoulders transmitted through the old upholstery of the sofa. Carefully and quietly, so as not to scare her or worsen her condition, I began to speak. "Denise," I said softly, my voice sounding muffled, as if afraid to break the fragile silence of the room. "Hey, what's wrong?" Her fingers spread a little, and I could see reddened eyes in which tears sparkled. Her lips trembled, like a person who has held back emotions for too long and can no longer hide them. The moment seemed endless. Tension hung in the air like thunder before a storm, and I knew that I was about to hear something that would change everything. Baby, what happened?" She slowly raised her head, wiping tears from her face. Her eyes were swollen. She cried for a long time. She didn't look at me. She just looked at one point in front of her. When she spoke, her voice was shaking as she tried her best not to burst into tears. Her hands flailed as if holding something invisible as she tried to speak the words. "You, Uncle Samuel, I really screwed up. Very." "What? What happened?" "Gee, Jeff, he kicked me out." I was so stunned that I stood up. "What?" He. He found out that I cheated on him, and you kicked me out." Now, I was so shocked that I almost missed the couch when I sat down again. "What did you do? When? With whom?" "With Mark." "With whom?" "With Mark." "With Mark? With Jeff's best friend? With that Mark?" She nodded, and tears rolled down her cheeks again. I just sat there, taking in what was happening. I remember thinking, what the hell is going on here? 8 months ago, Phoebe screwed up with Floyd, and now you and Jeff. Is this some kind of virus going around, forcing my relatives to do stupid things? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my nervousness and irritation under control. My heart was filled with anxiety and bewilderment, but as a bartender with many years of experience, I knew that the ability to remain cool in difficult moments was one of my greatest strengths. I looked at Denise, trying to find answers in her tense face, but all I saw was despair and confusion. It seemed as if her own emotions were tearing her apart from the inside, like a storm uprooting trees. Di, how could you? My words, despite my attempt to remain calm, sounded harsh, almost breaking into reproach. I closed my eyes, holding my breath briefly before looking at her again. For what? How could this even happen? Her hands were still shaking, her fingers nervously fiddling with the hem of her light blouse. She raised her eyes to me, filled with tears that still could not fall. Her voice sounded strangled, but her every sound was permeated with pain, as if she herself could not believe what was happening. Uncle Samuel, I swear, I wasn't looking for this. She took a shuddering breath, her lips trembling as if she was about to start crying. It all just happened somehow. I didn't want to hurt Jeff. Sincere torment splashed in her eyes, as if each of her thoughts was a heavy burden that pressed on her heart. I love him, I really do, and I don't know what to do if I lose him. Her words echoed in my mind, and I felt the tension grow in the air between us, like an invisible barrier. We both began to speak louder and louder, our voices gradually getting out of control, breaking into the thick silence. My anger and her desperation began to turn into something that could easily explode, but I needed to stop it before things got worse. Realizing that my team curious but kind-hearted employees might come check what was going on if the noise got too loud, I pulled myself together. I didn't want any of them to see our squabble and interfere in family matters, which are not at all for other people's ears. I took a small, time-worn keychain with a spare key to my house from the shelf and placed it in her trembling palm. My fingers squeezed her hand for a moment, trying to convey at least a drop of calm, which I barely had myself. Here, take this, I said, trying to make my voice sound firm, but not rude. Go to my house, it's just 2 blocks from here. I want you to wait for me there. When I arrive, you must be prepared to explain everything in detail, how it all started. Understood. She nodded, brushing away a tear that rolled down her cheek. I carefully led her out the back door, into a darkened alley where the light of the lantern barely penetrated the canopy of trees. None of the bar patrons or employees should have seen her in this state. I watched her leave, her back was still tense, but her steps became more confident. The anxiety still lingered, but I knew that to help Denise, I would need to listen to her version of events, every detail, every explanation she was willing to give. At 12:45 at night, I finally reached my house. The clock on the wall ticked monotonously in the darkness, and the whole house seemed shrouded in silence, like an old blanket, only occasionally interrupted by the sounds of cars outside the windows. I walked in, sighing heavily, as if this day had drained all my strength, and immediately noticed Denise. She sat slouched on the couch, holding her phone as if it were her only lifeline. Just then she hung up, apparently leaving her wanting 416th voicemail message, hoping that she would finally get an answer. Her face looked tired and broken, like someone who had tried and failed to escape her own demons. Without saying a word, I walked past her to my private bar. An old oak cabinet stored bottles of spirits for a rainy day, and this day was undoubtedly one of those days. I poured myself a generous portion of whiskey, the amber liquid sliding slowly down the sides of the glass. Having drunk in one gulp, I felt a burning sensation in my throat, which at least a little dispelled the fog in my head, but did not remove the heaviness that had settled on my heart. Without hesitation, I poured more and drained the second portion a little more slowly, trying to collect my thoughts and prepare for what I was about to hear. I knew that the night would be long, full of revelations that I might not want to understand, but I could not refuse this conversation. When I entered the living room, Denise looked even more lost than before. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and her gaze was glassy, like that of a person who had experienced something terrible and still did not believe in the reality of what was happening. She looked as if her every thought and memory was felt by a dull, hollow pain. Her shoulders sagged limply, like a person who is barely hanging on, but is desperately trying not to fall apart. I slowly sat down in my favorite chair, old, shabby, but damn comfortable, which had already survived many conversations, from family secrets to arguments with friends. I placed the glass with the rest of the whiskey on the night table next to the chair, the sound of glass on wood echoing throughout the room. I clasped my hands together and looked carefully at Denise, trying to read her state, but her face remained a mask of fatigue and confusion. "Come on, Dee, lay it out," I said, and my voice sounded deeper and heavier than I expected. "How did you get involved in this?" She looked at me, her eyes flashed with pain and fear, but there were still remnants of determination in them, crumbs of pride that seemed to keep her from completely disintegrating. She bit her lip as if trying to hold back the unspoken words, and then slowly exhaled. I waited with bated breath, knowing that now she would say something that might forever change the way I thought about everything I knew about her. I waited silently for her to gather her courage. It was terribly painful for her to tell me all this, but she knew that what was said in my house would remain in it. At first, she spoke slowly, but soon the words flowed out. "I think it all started about 5.5 months ago. I called the radio to answer a question that was on the air." "What was the question?" She winced, remembering these words. "Which friend of your spouse attracts you the most?" "And you called?" "Yes." "And you said that you want to be with Mark?" "No, I didn't say I wanted to sleep with him. Uncle, I—" "So did you say or not on the air that you are attracted to Mark? You say that as if I invited him to my home and seduced him." "Did you invite him?" "No, I would never do that." "You said Jeff caught you cheating." "Yes, but I didn't seduce Mark. I called the radio station and told them that my husband's best friend Mark was the one I was attracted to." "And someone brought this to Mark?" No. Later I found out that he himself heard me on the radio." "Where was Jeff at that time?" "On leave." "Uncle Samuel, you have to believe me. I wasn't looking for this. Everything just happened. I—" Yes, you didn't look for it, but you didn't stop it either." I was angry with her, and I didn't care that she knew it. I had no intention of sparing her feelings. She knew that when she came to me, I always spoke directly. My words and tone clearly had an effect on her. Her already red and swollen eyes filled with tears again. "No, but I didn't want to hurt Jeff. I don't want to lose our marriage." Oh God, that look in his eyes when he walked into Mark's bedroom. I was shocked again. "Did he find you together?" "In Mark's bed." The shock continued. "Oh damn, Uncle, I—" "No, don't say anything. You can't or won't explain why you did it, so don't try. Just tell me how it all started." She paused again to collect her thoughts. While she was doing this, I also took a break. Blood is thicker than water, and of course I would never do something like that with my own blood. But at this moment, I didn't want any awkward excitement to arise. I focused on her pain and my sadness for her and Jeff. It all started that Saturday afternoon. Mark called me. I told him that Jeff was gone until next Friday. This was during the 2-week period when he was in Colorado helping set up the Denver office. Mark said he knew about it and that he needed to talk to me. I was surprised. He continued and explained that he was having serious problems remodeling his apartment, and Jeff bragged about how good I was at such things. He asked if I could find some time to come over and help him figure it out. I said that I would be happy to help, and no, I was not thinking about sex with him then. I came to him around 2:30. He really had problems with choosing colors and layout of rooms. From 2:30 to 7 in the evening, we worked on colors, styles, furniture placement, balance, and so on. By the time we finished, he had about 10 pages of notes, but we worked through the entire apartment. I was about to leave when he offered to go out to dinner at his expense. I didn't really want to go home to leftovers in an empty house, so I agreed. And no, I didn't think about sex with him then either. We had worked hard, and dinner seemed like a reward for our efforts. We got into his car and went to dinner. I think this is where things started to change. Without Jeff to distract him, Mark was completely focused on me. He complimented me on the work I did and joked about how good I looked. I'd always known Mark to be a master communicator, but without Jeff to mix things up, I soon found myself completely caught up in his charm. He made me talk about things that I usually only shared with Jeff. The wine didn't help either, it only relaxed me even more. The dinner was great, and the extra wine made it even better. There was a club right next door, and Mark half jokingly, half seriously pulled me there, insisting that we should go in for a minute and dance a little. He knew I didn't need much convincing because I loved to dance, just like Jeff. We didn't stop for a drink or get a table. We went straight to the dance floor. I started to notice how good he looked in action. Before I realized it, the slow track had already started. Uncle Samuel, I love Jeff with all my heart, despite everything that's going on right now, but slow dancing with Mark was a completely new experience. This was probably the first trap. The wine warmed me and relaxed me, so I didn't think much of hugging him. I've done this many times with other men, but his hug felt so good, perhaps too good. I forgot who I was and who I belonged to. I myself began to cuddle back and didn't think about my husband at all. By the time the track ended, I was excited and excited. But in the car, he played his main trump card. I used to be able to use it like everyone else, but when Jeff and I got married, I left it in the past. I wasn't surprised when Mark pulled it out and said, "I'd offer you some, but I don't think you can handle it." "What do you mean?" "Well, I know you used to use a little, but your boyfriend Jeff kicked you off that bad habit." "Come on, Jeff didn't wean me off anything." I myself chose to either quit or slow down. Mark laughed, which made me a little angry. "The point is that you haven't used it for a long time, and you've never tried anything like this. Come on, Mark, it can't be something special." "Wow, who's teasing who here? Listen, you don't need this. This is for adults only." "Oh yes, you didn't go there. Come here." I snatched it. He laughed for a long time. Mark was making fun of me the whole way back. At his request, I left my purse because he was going to treat me, and I thought it was a great idea. It sounded logical at the time, but now I had to go back inside to get her. I took my bag and keys and was about to joke with him about how it wasn't that special when suddenly the slight intoxication in my head turned into a huge rumble and I literally collapsed. It may seem like he slipped me some kind of illegal substance to take advantage of me, but that's not the case. He caught me when I was falling and sat me down on the sofa. He placed my bag and keys on the coffee table in front of me. "Damn, I warned you. Denise, my girl, in this condition, you will not be able to drive. Why don't you stay here for the night? Sleep in my bed, and I'll sit on the sofa." And no, I can't. This is wrong. "Ha ha, look, Jeff won't find out anything. He would never forgive you for this. Just think how he'll laugh at the fact that it knocked you out. No, I can't do this to you, even for fun." He was right. The wine and this had a strong effect on me. I didn't find the thought of Jeff making fun of me funny. I decided to stay, but only on the couch. Mark brought me a pillow and a blanket and then left me one of his long shirts. He didn't say anything, just gently placed it on the armrest of the sofa. When he returned to the bedroom, I took off my clothes, leaving myself in my bra and panties, and put on a shirt. It fit me like a short nightgown. I remember thinking that it hugged me nicely, and I took off my bra. It was even better that way. At that moment, Mark came out again, went to the kitchen, took the juice, and offered it to me. In my drunken state, I decided to refuse. He stopped and looked at me. "You look amazing in my shirt, Denise." "Damn, this is simply mind-blowing." His words gave me a thrill that spread throughout my entire body. He winked and went into the bedroom. I settled down on the sofa. Surprisingly, it turned out to be very, very comfortable. I closed my eyes and seemed to begin to float. I dozed off and saw Jeff in my dream. He was so gentle, his hands were so warm. Not that he was different in real life, but there was something special in this dream. He kissed me. In the midst of this dream, I heard a man's voice. "Denise, You are so beautiful. I've wanted you for so long. I was going crazy from this pleasure, but at the same time, it was like I was in a trance. Everything happened in a kind of fog. When I came to my senses, my mind was clear, and I was shocked by what I saw. Mark leaned over me with a sly smile on his face. I still didn't realize what had happened, but at that moment his eyes seemed to captivate me. I remember I smiled back at him. Damn, Mark, that was amazing. Yes, I know, baby, but this is just the beginning. I didn't understand then that he was talking about something else. I didn't think about how or why this happened. I did not regret my betrayal to my husband and was not sad about my betrayal. I just enjoyed those sensations. When I woke up the next time, it was already morning. I was alone in Mark's bed. My body was still trembling from the sensations he gave me, but now my conscience finally reminded me of itself and overwhelmed me with guilt. I was terrified of myself. I've never cheated on Jeff before. The thought that I had betrayed his trust and love tore my heart. How could I do this? What kind of woman of easy virtue have I become? I got out of bed and went to the bathroom. I cleaned myself up as best I could and was already looking for my clothes when Mark entered the room. He didn't say a word, just hugged me and put me back to bed. I didn't resist. The whole experience left me overwhelmed and depressed. I left Mark only on Sunday afternoon. By the time I entered my house, I could barely hold back my tears. But she didn't even have time to burst into tears because as soon as she closed the door behind her, the phone rang. And then it suddenly occurred to me that I hadn't spoken to Jeff since Friday night. A feeling of guilt enveloped me like a thick shroud when I picked up the phone. Hello, G. Hello, baby. How is my new girlfriend doing? Mark, what are you calling here? Just wanted to make sure my best girl was okay. You were incredible, baby. Simply beyond all boundaries. Mark, listen to what happened last night. And this morning. Yes, and this morning. Look, it was good, but fine. Just good. Are you serious, Denise? No. Okay, it was amazing for me too. Yes, I know. But Mark, no matter how good it was a one-time thing. This won't happen again. If Jeff finds out, Denise, what Jeff doesn't know won't hurt him. And after yesterday, do you really think you can hold back what's between us? I will manage somehow. I love Jeff. I've never cheated on him before. Listen, Jeff is my brother, my best friend. I don't want your marriage to break up. But what happened last night is more than just a situation. It was powerful. It was bigger than us. It won't just go away. It has to go, Mark. I love Jeff too much to continue. Oh, you are a strong woman, but you will have to get used to it. His words surprised me. It felt like he knew he could always make me. Mark, listen. No, Denise, listen to this. That's how it is. I know you love Jeff. He's like a brother to me. But what happened between us is something special, unique. I've never experienced anything like this. You think you're strong and can stand up to it, but it's something you can't just forget. Mark, I have to. We both should. I'm a married woman. I love Jeff, and I'm not going to risk our marriage. Denise, you know I'm right. You think it's just a joke, but no, it's too strong. Mark, please. Okay, that's it. If you can hold out until Wednesday evening and not see me, I will believe that you have overcome this, that you are stronger than I thought. This shouldn't happen again, Mark. I can't risk hurting Jeff. We'll see when Thursday comes. Until then, sweet sexy dreams, D. When I hung up the phone, a warm wave spread throughout my body, and then I became scared. If Mark had such an impact on me with just one phone call, how could I resist the feelings that were still alive inside? My thoughts were interrupted by the sharp ringing of the phone, and I almost tore it off the wall in rage. What else do you need? Hey, I just wanted to talk to my wife. D, is everything okay? Jeff, oh honey, hi. Sorry, it was just someone's stupid prank. I just ran in from the street. Where have you been? I've been trying to call you all evening. Is everything okay? Yes, everything is fine. I was with Carol and Emma last night. You know how much fun we have. Sorry for not answering. Well, I still have a week left here. Then I'll go back home for a while. The conversation continued, and all this time my heart was breaking with pain and guilt for the lies and betrayal. Denise stopped here to gather her strength and not burst into tears out loud. I took a moment to ask questions that had been bothering me for a long time. Denise, have you ever thought that Mark might be eavesdropping? No. So you went to see him on Wednesday? No, on Tuesday. What? Uncle Samuel, I love Jeff with all my heart and soul. The last thing I ever wanted was to hurt him. I don't want to lose our marriage. Maybe if Jeff was home more often things might have been different. If I hadn't made that stupid call, Mark would never have dared to touch me. The sea. Uncle Samuel, I haven't slept all night since Sunday. I spent the entire night struggling with my guilt and pain over what I had done, but also with the feelings Mark had brought out in me. All Monday I was absorbed in thoughts about him. I couldn't help myself. Several times on Sunday and Monday I tried to relieve the passion. On Tuesday night I went to Mark's apartment to tell him it wouldn't happen again. He smiled when he saw me on the threshold and invited me into the living room. When I explained the reason for my coming, his face became serious and he asked, "D, what is the 11th commandment?" There is no 11th commandment. Oh, it still exists, and you heard Jeff and I repeat it 1,000 times. My conscience screamed, "Run, leave before it's too late," but my body didn't move. My mouth said what I had heard them say many times. Don't give up to yourself. Mark hugged me and kissed me. By the time he gave me the last kiss, it was already Wednesday afternoon. See, Uncle Samuel, I already know what you are going to say. All I had to do was stay away. The last thing I should have done was go there. I knew what I wanted when I arrived. I could resist. I know all the ways. I've used them all. But I went anyway, and after that night I kept coming back. Yes, he's that good. Not necessarily better than Jeff, but the difference and taboo added an excitement that I quickly became addicted to. We dated for the first couple of months when Jeff was away on business trips. Mark met my needs when Jeff was away, and I took care of my husband when he was home. But then Jeff received new responsibilities that kept him home for longer periods of time. I was happy. When Jeff was home, he got all my time and attention. Mark hated it. So when Jeff left again, Mark became increasingly demanding of my time, sometimes taking it up until the last moment before Jeff returned. Then Mark moved on. Knowing that I worked part-time at my own discretion, Mark encouraged me to tell Jeff what I needed for work when I didn't. Most reasonable people would be horrified by such a risk, but Mark made the danger so tempting that I couldn't resist. Now I saw Mark not 2-4 times a week when Jeff was away, but once or twice a week in general. I should have realized that everything was going badly. Uncle Samuel, it got to the point where I was canceling events and appointments with Jeff for Mark. Mark played me like a delicate instrument. I simply could not refuse him. Yesterday, everything came to a logical end on President's Day. Jeff and I planned to spend the day at a new spa that had just opened, and so Mark again insists that I spend part of the day with him. I lied to Jeff that I had a big project at work that required extra hours. Mark assured me that I would spend time with him in the morning, and then I would spend the entire day with Jeff. I didn't even argue. I just told Jeff, and he believed me, or at least that's what I thought. I got up at 6:30, left the house at 7:05, knocked on Mark's door at 7:35, and had sex with him by 7:39. She stopped. Shame choked her. You know, looking back now, it's funny how smooth Mark was in his manipulations. He was never cruel or rude. He wasn't trying to overtly dominate me. He almost never said anything bad about Jeff. He always talked about us and how special what we did was. I think he understood that if he humiliated Jeff, I would come to his defense. It would make it harder to control me. Or at least that's what I wanted to think. He acted subtly, not forcefully, but he still controlled me. I was canceling pre-planned appointments, events that I was looking forward to so I could be with my husband. I don't know how Jeff put two and two together and realized it was Mark and me. I don't know what he heard or saw. In 1 minute, my heart froze in horror when I heard, "Isn't this a bitch's life? My so-called loving wife is having sex with my best friend." I almost fainted when I saw Jeff in Mark's bedroom doorway. It seems he even filmed everything. Uncle Samuel, the last time I saw a similar look on Jeff's face was when he sent 4 people to the hospital. In a panic, I pushed Mark away and jumped out of bed. I locked myself in the bathroom. During the entire time we were together, despite all our disagreements and quarrels, I was never afraid of my husband. But at that moment, I was scared to death. I curled up in the corner of the bathroom and just sat there, crying. I heard muffled voices on the other side of the door, but fear constrained me, and I could not move. The muffled voices sounded as if endlessly. Then a loud shot was heard. I buried my face in my hands. Then there was silence. Despite my fear of Jeff, a new fear came over me. Now I was afraid for Jeff, afraid that he might get hurt or, worse, die. No matter how things turned out, I still loved him and didn't want him to get hurt, at least not any more than I had already done. I remember how I began to slowly crawl towards the door. Suddenly, the door exploded inward, pieces of it falling on and around me. I froze when I saw Jeff step over the rubble. Behind him, Mark lay motionless in a spreading pool of blood. "You bitch! Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Jeff, honey, Shut up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." I said, "Shut up." "Ah, Jeff, please. It's my fault, honey. Forgive me, forgive me. I ruined everything, and I'm sorry." Jeff removed my hands from his pant legs and slowly knelt down until he was right in front of my face. I was afraid to move, afraid to even breathe. When he spoke, my heart sank, my blood froze in my veins. His voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. "I loved you. I gave you everything I had. Do you want to be his? If you want to have sex with my ex-friend, please. When he wakes up, you can sleep with him as much as you like. You can stay with him all day, all night. But don't stay too long because it will take you a while to find a truck, minivan, or whatever to pick up your stuff. They will be waiting for you on the porch." What? Are you kicking me out? No, Jeff, no, honey, we can fix this. I'll never do that again, I swear. Please, darling, I love you. Give us a chance to make things right. Jeff didn't answer. He slowly stood up and stepped away from me. He stopped, looked down, then slowly and carefully removed the wedding ring from his finger. He picked it up and looked at it. "You know, this simple gold ring used to mean everything to me. Now it's just a piece of trash." He threw the ring into the air, and it fell into my lap. For a long time, I sat looking at him in a daze. Then Mark groaned, and that brought me out of my stupor. I jumped up and started getting dressed. All the adrenaline from the danger disappeared. Now it has been replaced by a new panic. I wasn't afraid of what Jeff might do to me physically, but of losing him forever. Now my conscience was screaming about how stupid it all was. Mark has always been a womanizer. Risk was as exciting to him as sex. Was I one of how many women, 3, 5, 10, who regularly shared his bed? This was never what I wanted in my life, sharing a man. Mark always said I was special, but I knew after the first night that he still had a harem of other women. I loved Jeff. I never wanted to share him or have him share me with anyone. That's why he has always been my heart. I never wanted to hurt him, and the last thing I wanted was to lose him. I ran out of Mark's apartment when he called me to help him. I didn't stop. I needed to get home. I had to do everything possible to save my marriage. Beg, cry, crawl, scream, or shoot him or myself, if that's what it takes to save my husband and our marriage. I jumped into the car, intent on breaking all the speed rules on the way home. I pressed the gas, the engine roared, but the car barely moved, only jerked and began to roll slowly. I stopped and went out to see what was in the way. I was stunned to discover that Jeff had deflated both front tires. In desperation, I ran back to Mark's apartment. I was going to take his keys and use his car to catch up with Jeff. But when I saw Mark's car, I froze. All 4 tires were flat. Jeff made sure none of us could follow him. I reached into my purse to get my cell phone and call a tow truck, but it was gone. I stood in a stupor. One of the qualities I always loved about Jeff was his thoroughness in business. I never expected that this quality could be turned against me. 3 hours passed before I finally arrived at our house. I didn't know what to expect when I walked through the door. I just knew that I would do anything to make things right. I thought maybe I'd have a better chance if I came through the garage. I pressed the garage door opener, but didn't have time to enter. Once again, I froze in shock. There were boxes on my side of the garage. 6 large wardrobe boxes and 5 regular ones. I walked up and started looking inside. In 3 hours, he packed all my clothes, shoes, jewelry, personal belongings, and took them out of the house. Then the door opened and Jeff came out carrying another large box. "Jeff, what are you doing?" Jeff didn't change his expression. "You better find a truck, or at least a minivan. You can't fit it all in your car." "I don't believe it. Are you kicking me out? Are you expelling me as a defaulter?" "Oh no. You see, tenants have due process rights. Don't worry, I give you your rights too. Now you are free. You can sleep with Mark or with anyone else." "Jeff, please, let's go inside and talk about this." "What are we talking about here, Denise? Tell me, what do you have that I want to hear?" "Jeff, I'm sorry. This should never have happened. I ruined everything, okay? What I did was terrible and wrong, but darling, I love you, not Mark. It was just sexual attraction. Please, dear, don't throw away what we have." "Just sexual attraction, right? Did it mean nothing? If I tried to use this excuse, I would be every possible scoundrel and bastard. So let me tell you what just sex means." "Jeff, No, no, no. Let's talk about what just sex means. If it's just sex, then I can go and have sex with one of your sorority sisters, like Stephanie. Oh yes, she wanted this from the very beginning. I just have to agree. Or maybe I should go to your cousin Phoebe and do this with her. What's happened? Don't like it. What's wrong with this? It's just sex, right? If it was just sex, why would I lie? If it was just sex, why cancel our plans at the last minute to run to Mark's house and get ours? It doesn't matter that we spent time and money planning these trips. For you, it was just sex. It was just sex. But when Mark was next to us, or when we met with friends in the club, suddenly I was left without your love because you were afraid that you might accidentally scream his name. How long have you been deceiving me for sex?" A cold horror ran through me. "Where did you hear? Answer the question, Denise. How long have you been cheating on me?" "Honey, please, let's go into the house and discuss this calmly." "No, we can't. What time is it, Denise?" I thought that if I answered quietly, it would somehow soften the situation and help us move on. I was wrong. 5, almost 6 months. But Jeff, 6 months? You had sex with my ex-best friend for 6 months, and you seriously expect me to believe it was just sex? 6 months of lies and secret meetings, is it just sex? Now I understand. I now understand why lately, when I returned home from a business trip, you looked like you wanted to do anything but make love. You just returned from him. No, this is not true. I just wanted to try something new, that's all. No, you wanted someone else. I was confused and on edge. Jeff wasn't going to listen to me, and I didn't know what else to do. I should have done something, anything, but not what I did. Okay, I was his sellout. Is that what you want to hear? Great. I slept with him every chance I got. Does this make you happy? Jeff, I love you. I can't lose you. I love you, darling. Yes, you love me, right? Well, now you will know whether it is better to love and lose than not to love at all. Your things will be here in the garage for another 48 hours. Then I'll take whatever's left out onto the front lawn. The door locks will be changed tomorrow morning, and the garage remote will be reset in 2 days. I have already closed the joint bank account. I deposited half of the money into your personal account. Now I advise you to load everything you can and leave. No, Jeff, don't do this. Please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. Whatever you say, darling. Just please, let's go into the house and discuss everything. I grabbed his hand, holding on for dear life, but he pulled away abruptly, as if it was nothing. The next moment, he pressed his hand to my chest, holding me like a child. The look he gave me chilled me to the core. Don't touch me again. I might forget who you are. I was completely devastated. I stood there as he entered the house, slammed and locked the door. I heard him switch the lock to the bolt, so my key would no longer fit. I banged on the door until my hands hurt. I screamed until I lost my voice, but Jeff never opened the door or even looked out the window. As I stood there, sobbing, I had to admit that he was right. If our roles were reversed, I would have done the same thing, and perhaps even worse. But I couldn't just give up, so I finally came to you, Uncle Samuel. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the floor. From the outside, it looked like I was deep in thought. Inside, I was in complete shock. First Phoebe and now Denise. I began to wonder if my relatives were going crazy. Both had good, strong husbands and stable marriages. None of them were stupid. So why did they make such stupid mistakes, ruining the relationships they said they loved and valued? Phoebe's husband, Floyd, divorced her and went to Europe to work on an international investment project at a bank. It crushed Phoebe, and she still hasn't recovered. And now I had to watch it again with another member of my family. Denise and Jeff have 10 good years under their belts. Why did she throw it all away? She looked at me with pleading in her eyes. I needed to say something, but it might not be what she wanted to hear. Denise, I love you. You know that, but I need to ask you the hard questions. I know. Why? Why did I let this happen? Why didn't I stop? Why did she allow Mark to develop all this? Why did you put your marriage and your husband at risk? I don't know. I don't have an answer, not even one that makes even the slightest bit of sense. I just allowed myself to get into this situation. But Jeff needs to know that I never stopped loving him. This must mean something. You say this after you canceled plans with your husband so you could run and jump into bed with your lover. Denise winced, as if my words had hurt her. Her voice trembled with suppressed shame. I love Jeff. I never stopped loving him. Jeff was right, Denise. What if the roles were reversed? What if he cancels your plans to go and have sex with one of your girlfriends? What would you do if you caught him in the middle of the act? She cringed again, and the tears she had been holding back began to flow. I felt both pity and anger for her. I went to pour myself another glass, this time a straight 7-Up. When I returned, the tears stopped. Uncle Samuel, you must help me. I don't know what else to do. Please talk to Jeff for me. He doesn't listen to me, but he will listen to you. Should I talk to Jeff? What makes you think he'll listen to me? You are a man. He loves and respects you. If you tell him how much I'm sorry and how I'm willing to do anything to get a second chance, he'll listen to you. He will also think that I am standing up for his wife, my niece. This could make things worse. Uncle Samuel, it couldn't get any worse. I was kicked out of my house, and my husband won't talk to me. What could be worse? Do you really want to know this? Her face became like that of a person clinging to a broken rope and looking into a bottomless abyss. Uncle Samuel, I can't think about divorce. I can't allow this. Denise, you know how I am. I must tell the truth. There is a very real possibility that it is already too late. You could have completely ruined your marriage. No, I told you I can't allow this. I love Jeff. Deep down, he knows this. He's just too angry to see it now. Once he calms down, he will remember that I love him. That mark means nothing to me. In the meantime, you must help me, Uncle Samuel. He won't listen to anyone anymore. Please, Uncle Samuel. Denise was on edge. I have 2 brothers and 1 sister, and a total of 7 nieces and nephews. If we have taught them anything, it is to persevere and not give up when times get tough. When life gets difficult, you need to persevere until the very end, despite the obstacles. But this, with the exception of Phoebe, none of them had been in as difficult a situation as Denise. Phoebe's marriage ended due to similar circumstances. When her husband Floyd found out about the affair, he immediately filed for divorce and left for Europe. It was catastrophic for Phoebe, and she still hasn't fully recovered. Oh yes, she pulled herself together and continued to live, but there was no more joy in her life. Jeff was cut from the same cloth, passionate in his affections, but also decisive in his actions when angry. This is what frightened and terrified Denise, but she is my niece, part of our family. If nothing else, I could at least ask Jeff to listen to his version of events. The next morning, I drove up to their house. The blinds on all the windows were closed. If I hadn't called ahead, I would have thought no one was home. As I sat in my chair, wondering what to say and what to do, I was suddenly distracted by the sound of an engine skidding to a stop at the curb in front of my house. I looked out the window and saw a white Lexus LS 400, sparkling even in the dim light of the night lights. The car looked immaculate, immaculately clean, with a shiny finish, just like its owner, one of Denise's best friends, Marva Wilson Smith. When the Lexus door opened, a slender, tall woman stepped out with the grace and confidence inherent only in those who know their own attractiveness. Marva was simply mesmerizing. With her height of 5 feet 8 inches and about 173 centimeters, she looked impressive, and her figure always attracted attention. Her long legs, honed by frequent training, and deliciously rounded hips stood out even under the strict but elegant business suits she loved to wear. In heels, she became even taller and more irresistible. Her hair, smooth and well-groomed, always shone, and her bright smile could blind anyone, although her manners often showed a slight arrogance. When Marwa walked by, men inevitably turned around, risking neck pain later, and women either admired her style or looked askance at her confident movements. True, her appearance was not her only strong quality. She had a sharp mind and a caustic sense of humor, which she could use as a weapon when she wanted to upset or impress someone. It was her wit and self-confidence that made her slightly arrogant, which annoyed some people but captivated many others. Today, however, the expression on her face was not as carefree and mocking as usual. Instead, it was full of anxiety, and that immediately alerted me. Apparently, rumors had already begun to spread, I thought, and it was possible that Denise herself could call Marva in desperation, seeking consolation. If so, this will be an unpleasant turn, because I plan to first figure everything out myself, without extra ears and eyes. Marva noticed me at the window and, raising her eyebrows in surprise, stepped forward. Her voice, full of anxiety, pierced the silence. "Sam," she called. Her tone was sharp, but at the same time surprised. "If you're here this morning, something really happened." She came closer, her heels clicking softly on the asphalt, and I again felt in her that powerful energy that she always brought with her. Her eyes sparkled, and she seemed to be sincerely trying to figure out what kind of trouble was hanging over her friend. "I heard that Jeff kicked Denise out," she continued, more insistently. "What's going on? Have you seen Denise?" Her words sounded like a demand, but behind it there was obvious concern. I felt slightly irritated, not because she was here, but because it meant that everyone already knew. At such moments, a man really prefers to sort out men's affairs without a woman's presence, in which some topics are more difficult to discuss than with a friend or relative. But I suppressed my irritation and focused on what lay ahead. "Yes, Marva, she is at my house. Listen, why don't you go see her? She really needs support." "Is he completely crazy?" "Marva, listen. Did he hurt her? If yes, oh, okay. Since I'm here, I'll ask this madman myself." I barely had time to grab her hand as she walked towards the door. She turned around with an expression like she was ready to hit me. "Hey, take it easy, Marva. Before you make the same mistake as Denise, stop and listen to me." She looked at me angrily but stopped. This was a woman who was used to having her own way. "You better listen to me before you rush in there and wake up in a hospital. If you're determined to find out what happened, you have two options. Either go to my house and talk to Denise or stay here. But if you stay, you must keep your mouth shut, okay? Put that sharp tongue of yours in neutral, or I'll run your gorgeous ass off this street myself. Is it clear?" Marwa's eyes widened in shock. She was a fairly wealthy woman and was not used to such treatment. Luckily for me, I was one of the few people in town that she respected and was afraid of. I had already had to put her in her place when she tried to argue with me, and I was sure that she would not want to repeat this humiliation. Her answer sounded icy. "Okay, Samuel, it will be your way. I won't say a word. Bye." I made sure she stood behind me as we approached the door. When the door opened, the expression on Jeff's face was not one of surprise, but rather annoyance. "Well, this is not an ordinary sight. Since you called, Sam, I assumed that Denise came running to you for help, but also Marva. Never knew you'd need some help, Sam." "Look, Jeff, I don't know about Sam, but I just want to." "Marva, what did I tell you?" "But, Marva." She huffed in annoyance, but closed her mouth. "Okay, Jeff, you're right. Denise came to me for help. Now I want to hear your side. Will you let us in, or will you slam the door in my face?" There was a long, tense pause as I waited for his answer. This was a test of my relationship with him, which I tried to build on the basis of honesty and trust. Most often, women have older friends or relatives to whom they can turn for wise advice. Although it is becoming less common, the practice still exists. But for black men, it's a completely different story, especially in today's society. There is something of a wisdom gap in the black community. Men often have to endure the hardships of life alone. More and more men, tired of adversity and blows of fate, are left alone with their tears in the dark. This is partly our fault. The cult of youth has marginalized older men, making them old-fashioned and out of fashion. The spread of the hip-hop mentality only made the divide worse. No one wants to be seen as a weakling who listens to their elders, be it a father, an uncle, or just a wise person. My father-in-law said it best. "Sam, I know you have smart friends, but sometimes, being young, they can be stupid. There are some things that never change, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. Sometimes it is worth listening to the voice of experience. Evaluate yourself not in comparison with your friends, but with someone who has already walked the road you are on." Now I was testing his advice and my personal promise to be there. Jeff's face was grim as he struggled with his emotions. Even after 24 hours, the pain was still sharp, and the nerves were exposed. He slowly backed away from the door. I squeezed Marwa's hand tightly and sat her down on the sofa next to me. She tried to pull her hand away, but I squeezed it tighter. She remained sitting silently, putting her hand in mine. "Well, Jeff, tell me what happened." "If Denise has already told you her version, then you know more than I do. Why don't you tell me?" "Jeff, who else was here? You didn't answer calls and didn't leave the house. We often talked about how men, especially black men, deal with pain alone in the dark. It is often at such moments that madness begins. Black men especially keep everything to themselves because they have no one to turn to for advice. I'm not asking you to cry. I'm just offering an opportunity to let off some steam. It's up to you." More one tense pause. Jeff looked at me, then at Marva, then back at me. He shook his head, as if trying to clear a fog from his mind. The last few weeks I felt like something had changed. Denise was no longer as joyful and passionate as before. We still made love, but the passion she once showed was gone. She used to be so eager for me that sometimes we didn't even make it to the bedroom. She was hungry for me, longed for our intimacy, and then suddenly everything became different. Now, if I get something, then good, and if not, then okay too. At first, she began to come up with excuses so as not to rush home for intimacy. Her favorite explanation, which I accepted, was that she wanted to diversify our relationship. Well, I thought that, of course, after 10 years, marriage can become boring. So I tried to come up with something new. Planned several weekend trips, day trips, basically anything to get us out somewhere. I even went to my boss and said I needed to slow down. He didn't like it, but he preferred to give in to me than to lose a good employee. I thought slowing down the pace would make things better, but it only made things feel more wrong. At times, everything was as before, great, but at other times. For example, when we went out with friends, Everything seemed to be in order. She was so attractive and seductive that some friends joked that I would not have to sleep that night. And then, when we returned home, nothing. It was as if someone had turned off all emotions in her. I stood there, literally crazy with desire, but she said she was too tired or had a headache. Now, looking back, I realized that these were the evenings when Mark was with us, and they spent a lot of time together. I could never even imagine that. Jeff stopped to collect himself. For the first time, I noticed how grief was boiling inside him. Marva wanted to say something, but I gently squeezed her hand, and she remained silent. Jeff cleared his throat and continued. I knew that something was wrong, but for a long time I could not believe that my wife was cheating on me. My mind put two and two together, but my heart refused to accept that four meant Denise had cheated. Denise, Jeff, this is impossible. I squeezed Marwa's hand so hard that she winced in pain. Jeff waited for her to calm down. My reaction was the same as yours, Marwa. It seemed impossible. I tried to consider other options, but the more I looked away, the more obvious it became that I had to return to this idea. After 10 years of marriage, my wife is cheating on me. More and more of our meetings and plans were canceled, many of them at the last minute. She either had to work, or was tired, or did not feel well. Intimate relationships became increasingly rare, and when we did make love, everything was fine, but now it only increased my suspicions. I almost decided to accept it. I thought maybe this was just a temporary phase she was going through, but yesterday it all blew up in my face. What happened yesterday, Jeff? We had planned a trip to a new spa, and then we're going to head to the dock for some good seafood. This had been decided weeks before. Yesterday was President's Day, a holiday, and I had the day off. Like I said, we had been planning this trip for weeks, but on Saturday she came up to me and told me she had to go to work. They were almost finishing an important project, and she needed help finishing it. Since I was half expecting this, I just shrugged and remarked how nice of her it was to waste our money and my time. She tried to apologize, but by that point I didn't care anymore. She said that we would have the whole day and evening together, but for me it was all just empty words. I hardly spoke to her on Saturday or Sunday. On Monday morning, she left home before sunrise. I decided that when she returned, we would need to have a serious conversation. Not about her infidelity, I still had no proof, but about her irresponsibility. About how she waits for me to spend time and money before she refuses. If she didn't want to go, she should have said so from the very beginning. Thinking about what to say, I turned on the radio. I love listening to host DJ Rock. He can always cheer you up. Yesterday, they had a day of broadcast highlights. I love these types of shows, so I decided to record it so I could laugh later. It's good that I wrote it down, otherwise I might have missed everything. Jeff walked over and turned on the entertainment system. He stared at the floor, scrolling the tape to that moment that I knew he had replayed over and over again. I watched as Marva's face paled as she recognized Denise's voice. Her jaw dropped as the recording continued. She couldn't meet my gaze as Denise talked gushingly about Mark. Even though I heard it from Denise herself, I still shuddered at the enthusiasm with which she described everything. When the recording ended, Jeff turned off the tape. That's when it all dawned on me. I still couldn't believe it, but now it was impossible to deny it. That's the only way it all made sense. I remembered the nights when I would tell my best friend about my problems, and he would say that I was just screwing myself over, that we've had 10 good years of passionate sex, and maybe it's time to cool down a little. No matter how much I laughed at Mark and his affairs with women, I never thought that it would affect me personally. How many times have I watched the women he was with return to him like happy slaves? I didn't want to believe it, but there was no other explanation. I had to be sure, so I took my digital camera and drove to Denise's place of work, where she said she was supposed to go. She wasn't there, and wasn't there the entire first half of the day. I know, the guard showed me the logbook. Now that I had confirmed the lie, all I had to do was confirm the betrayal. I went to Mark's apartment. There, 3 seats away from his 300ZX, sat Denise's Corolla. Since my camera automatically set the date and time, I took pictures of her car in the parking lot of his apartment complex. I was furious, but what I saw next was even worse. Mark is afraid of heights, so his apartment is on the first floor. I walked around the house and looked into his bedroom window. The translucent curtains were drawn, but there was a small hole at the bottom through which I could take pictures. There, on his bed, was Denise. My heart was breaking into pieces. I took pictures of both of them. Denise and I had filmed our lovemaking before, and it turned me on, but now it was completely different. I was looking at their world through red and green lenses, as if they had been married for 10 years and I was a stranger. I watched my closer-than-brother have sex with my wife. I was completely destroyed. I dropped the camera and sat down on the ground under the window to recover a little. Something inside me broke. Pain and grief gave way to rage. I decided that one way or another I would catch them in the act. I walked around the building and looked at their cars. I don't know why I did it, but it was probably a reaction on autopilot. I thought, no, they won't run away from me. So I flattened the front tires on Denise's Corolla. I then took a screwdriver from her trunk and walked over to Mark's 300ZX. I stood there for a moment, remembering how I helped him select and install those special wide tires on those expensive $2,000 chrome wheels. I stuck a screwdriver into each tire where it met the rim and deflated all the air. It was a miracle that no one noticed me, otherwise I would still be in prison. Their escape was blocked, so I went to Mark's door. At first I wanted to just kick her out, but since I wanted to catch them in the middle of it, I decided to use one of my less popular abilities. I picked the lock. Don't be surprised, my father was a mechanic, remember? In less than a minute I was inside. I stopped when I noticed Denise's purse on the table. I reached into her and pulled out her cell phone. Then I walked up to Mark's slightly open bedroom door and saw them again. They had their back to me, so I started filming them. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't hear the clicks or notice the flash. I took great pictures of their tattoos on his back, on her thigh and ankle. Now it's time to make your presence known. I wanted to capture their facial expressions. You can see for yourself. He took out a yellow envelope and threw it on the table. Digital photographs on photo paper slid out. Damn, he caught them red-handed. Denise screamed and ran into the bathroom. Mark jumped to the other side, trying to hold on to the bed for cover. Jeff, buddy, hey, don't freak out. This can be explained. Oh yes, is it true? My best friend, my life partner, best man at my wedding, the man who was like a brother to me. Can you explain why I caught you having sex with my wife? It took Mark a few seconds, but he started talking, hoping it would save him. Wait, buddy, you know how it goes. You know me, I'm a player, always have been, but you and I are like brothers. Nothing and no one can change this. Things happen in life, you know. Well, I slept with your wife. So what? So what? You fucking bastard. Do you call yourself my friend? Is this what you do to a friend? How many times have I stood up for your stupid ass? How many times have I protected you? Do you dare tell me such crap? So you thank me for our friendship, sticking a knife in my back and ruining my marriage. You damn idiot. You had plenty of women to choose from. Why did you need to sleep with mine? For a moment, I felt it hit me, and the grief overcame me over the betrayal of my former best friend. But then Mark opened his mouth and said something he shouldn't have said. Listen, Jeff, what can I say? I'm sorry you got hurt, but I'm a player, always have been. I just did what was natural for me. Don't take it so personally. She was there, and I took the chance. It was one of the best pieces of ass I've ever had. I'm not sure what exactly I did next. I just remember exploding. I never had a reputation as a brawler. I have always tried to be guided by my mind, not by brute force. But it seems I couldn't hold back. Here you go, bastard. I just did what comes naturally when you're dealing with a bastard like you. I should have finished you off 4 years ago when you tore Marvin and Rochelle apart. Then you told me that you would never touch a married woman again. I warned you that one day someone will come and you will get what you deserve. Now you've learned the hard way. There are people you shouldn't mess with. Then I turned my attention to my wife, or more precisely, to the bathroom door behind which she was hiding. I was still pumped with adrenaline, so I hit the door and it shattered. I stepped forward and saw Denise on all fours trying to crawl to the end of the bathroom. I didn't listen to anything she was trying to say. I told her that if she wants to be his, then please, but it's over between us. And he left. You probably know the rest from the story Denise made up. Jeff leaned back in his chair and crossed his legs, trying to look indifferent, but I could see the emotions bubbling inside him. And I was simply stunned. I knew that Mark had always been a ladies' man, but I never thought that he would stoop so low as to betray his best friend. I couldn't think of anything useful to say, so I started slowly. How are you holding up, Jeff? Jeff's face darkened even more. How am I holding up? How do you think I should carry myself? My wife of 10 fucking years started cheating on me with my best friend, and you think I should just wish them happiness? Well, no, to hell with them. I spoke softly to reassure Jeff. Jeff, dude, it's okay to be angry. I wasn't there, but I also want to kill them both. 10 years, dude. For 10 years, I gave her everything I had. All that I am. She knew what he was like. Why did she do this to me? I just don't understand. I just don't understand how she could do this. Jeff, I don't think Denise herself understands. I understand. We both shuddered and turned around. We completely forgot that Marva was sitting here. She sat with her head bowed, her hair hiding her face. There were still several photographs in her hands. She sobbed, holding back her tears, and shuddered. I know exactly how Denise feels. Jeff, you may not be listening to me right now, but Denise is dying inside right now. Dies of shame, humiliation, and fear. Jeff, she loves you more than anything in this world. She would crawl here on her knees if it meant getting a second chance. Yes, sure. Nice try, Marva, but I expected this from you because you are her friend. This has nothing to do with friendship. This is due to personal experience. Remember, I'm the former Mrs. Harold Smith. Jeff and I sat there dumbfounded. Are you saying that you and Mark? Yes, Sam, me, and Mark. Jeff finally found his voice. Wow, and this is the most decent Marva Wilson Smith from among the Mark's girls. Jeff's words were full of venom, but Marva didn't defend herself or back down. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but full of passion. Okay, Jeff, call me a bitch, a woman of easy virtue, as you please. It won't change anything. When were you and Mark together? How is it that no one found out about this? Nobody found out, Sam, because Harold, despite the pain and humiliation, loved me so much that he did not want to expose me to public censure. Or he was too weak. I saw Marva's eyes light up at Jeff's words. Harold was not a weakling. If you were half as smart as you think you are, you would know that there are many ways to get back at a person. Harold was henpecked, and Mark let him down. I don't need to know all the details. I see the result. Now Jeff started to annoy me, but before I could say anything, Marva got into an argument with fury. You're a smug ass. No wonder Mark was able to get Denise. You probably immediately realized that someone was sleeping with your wife. Did you put two and two together right away? No? Oh yeah, you were too blind to notice. I stepped between them to prevent the conflict from escalating. Both of you shut up. Jeff, be careful about judging others before you understand the consequences of your words. I knew Harold, and he was a good man. You are defending a man who not only betrayed you, but also lied to your face. You said he vowed to leave married women 4 years ago. Marva's divorce took place a little over a year and a half ago. Marva, you must understand that your confession is a shock. Are you saying that Mark caused the end of your marriage almost 2 years ago? I'm saying that, like Denise, I fell into a trap and lost someone I really loved. I never stopped loving Harold. Mark is simply one in a million, a seducer with innate talent. I wasn't looking for an opportunity to sleep with him. It's not like Mark made Harold a cuckold on purpose. He never spoke ill of him. Somehow Mark understands what turns a woman on and amplifies it tenfold. At some point it all ends. You are already seduced, and betrayal becomes part of this whole obsession. The first time this happened was at the annual ball of our women's organization. That year, the ball was held at the Embassy Suites Hotel. I was angry at Harold because he was away on a business trip and was supposed to be there until the middle of next week. I decided that this would not stop me from having a good evening. I put on a sexy new dress, a tight red and black strapless one that showed off all my curves. I paired it with red sheer stockings and black shoes with 4-inch heels. I also wore my gold and diamond necklace and matching tennis bracelet. My hair and makeup were perfect. I knew I'd drive men crazy, and I loved it. I thought that Harold deserved it for not being around. I spent most of the evening teasing men, playing with them, but in the end I blew them all away. Until Mark came up. Somehow he changed the dynamics of the game. I tried to tease him, and he teased me back. It became a constant game that escalated as the evening wore on. We danced, and the game continued. That's when the seduction began. He made me feel like I was still in control. I danced with different men, but always returned to Mark's arms. It was only when the slow melody began that I realized that control was slipping out of my hands. When the music started, I just slid into his arms as if it was natural. I melted in his arms. I should have stopped him right then, but I didn't. No man, not even Harold, whom I loved dearly, ever aroused such desire in me. Marva paused to collect her thoughts. Both Jeff and I shifted in our seats, trying to hide our growing excitement. He continued to kiss me, and I made no attempt to stop him. He continued to press himself against me, and I suddenly realized that I was giving in. When the crowd began to thin out, he invited me to go up to his room. My mind said, no, but I barely audibly said, yes. He led me to the elevator. I remember wondering what those around us must think when they looked at us. I completely surrendered to him and didn't realize it. When I left his room early in the morning, we both knew that he could get me at any moment. By the time Harold found out everything, this had been going on for almost a year and a half. We got to the point where we became so self-confident that we did it in our home, in our marital bed. Harold's look when he saw us still haunts me at night. Of course he was furious. She and Mark argued and fought. Harold didn't stand a chance. Mark beat him up. Of course, I was horrified and humiliated by what happened. Certainly. Jeff, chill, dude. It's okay, Sam. There's nothing he could say to me that I haven't already heard 1,000 times from family, friends, myself, Denise. Denise? Did Denise know about this? She didn't tell me anything. I swore to her to keep it a secret. She scolded me harshly when I told her everything. She said that she was also attracted to him, but she would never risk marriage for this. Well, yes, of course, we see that it was a lie. No, Jeff, she didn't lie. Despite how it looks, she loves you. Yes, I saw how much she loves me. I heard her say that she likes. Jeff, she's trapped. A trap I know all too well, but you know too. How many times has he bragged to you, his best friend, about his love affairs? How many times have you given him advice on how to get out of difficult situations? Weren't you the one who helped him escape Beulah Thorne's revenge? Beulah Thorne, who is this? Jeff paused for a moment, as if something in Marva's words had offended him. Beulah Thorne was the husband of Charna Thorne. Supposedly, she was the last married woman he had an affair with before Denise, but that was 4 years ago. How are you involved in all this, Marva? She fidgeted restlessly, gathering her courage. Obviously, it was something she never wanted to talk about. Mark told you that Charna was the last married woman he hit on, but he meant the last one he conquered. He said nothing about previous conquests. He ended relationships with 4 women I know, but he called me and 2 others too special to just leave. If you don't believe me, we can call Charlotte Beckman right now. Jeff's face darkened. It was clear that he was only now learning important details. Marva continued her story. After Mark beat Harold, I knelt down and took his head in my hands. I was still naked, but I didn't care. All I felt was shame and grief that I had betrayed my love and my marriage. Understand that I never stopped loving Harold. I just found myself drawn into the game of seduction. Memories of the look on his face when he saw us still make me cringe in horror to this day. Seeing him beaten after my betrayal made me think for a moment about death. I held him and rocked him until he came to his senses. If I knew what he would do when he woke up, I would have tied him to a chair so that he would listen to me and give me a chance to fix everything. His eyes were clouded when he first came to his senses. Then his gaze cleared. He pulled away from my embrace and stepped back. At first, I thought that Mark had returned and was standing behind me. In his eyes, I saw not fear, but rather despair. He looked at me the way a man who has lost the most precious thing in his life looks, like a man grieving the death of his great love. He didn't say a word, got up, collected his things, and left. I apologized, begged him to forgive me, to give me a chance to fix everything, but he didn't say a word. He simply turned around and left, taking his things with him. Since I was naked, I could not run outside after him. I went to the bathroom to clean myself up, and when I looked at myself in the full-length mirror, I collapsed on the floor, unable to stand the sight. The next time I saw Harold was a few days later, when he returned home. I was sure that now that he had cooled down, he would listen to me. I opened the door, and he immediately handed me the divorce papers. He came with several other men. When the shock wore off, I screamed, begged, cried, even slapped him, but he barely spoke to me. Half of his rare words were, "On page 2, paragraph 9, it says that I have the right to take my clothes and things necessary for work." They left the house in less than 20 minutes. The divorce went quickly, not because I didn't try to stop it. Harold's lawyer did his best to prevent me from getting time for reconciliation. I tried to make him fight, demanding everything except his clothes. But he didn't resist. I got almost everything I wanted, and even more. He wanted to get rid of me so badly. He sold his business, his car, liquidated his shares, and paid all my bills. Still, I was in tears when the judge signed the divorce decree. If you looked at me then, you would have thought that I had lost everything. And you would be right, because that's how it happened. If you visit him in Washington, D.C. today, you will see that he not only restored everything, but also made great strides. He is married again to a beautiful woman who adores him. They even have a 4-month-old son. I kept putting off the question of children, and now I'm ready to give everything to have his child. I was depressed for months. I couldn't understand why he didn't get angry, didn't scream, didn't fight. Denise was the one who explained to me what happened that night. My betrayal and beatings of Mark broke not only his heart, but also his spirit. He felt that he had no choice but to leave by any means necessary. I tried to keep in touch, hoping that one day he would see that I really loved him. It all ended when one day a woman's voice answered the phone. She didn't stand on ceremony, telling me to leave him alone and find someone else to sleep with. She was going to take care of him. Then I realized that I had lost him forever. I thought that Denise, of all people, would be the most resistant to Mark's charm. This is probably what made her such a desirable trophy for him. "Jeff, I know you're angry and desperate. You have every right to do this. But despite the anger and pain, please remember the love you had. Denise loves you. She is now going through 12 circles of hell, but if you could hold on to that love and forgive her, you would see that she would never do anything like that again." Our three-way conversation lasted all day and night. In the end, nothing was decided. Almost a year has passed since they separated. Denise stops by the house at least once every couple of weeks, sometimes staying overnight, sometimes not. She moved in with her cousin Phoebe, and they seem to get along well. They support each other morally. Denise hopes that Jeff will one day agree to a full reconciliation, and Phoebe hopes to one day remarry her ex-husband Floyd. But that's another story. I have asked Denise more than once why she runs to Jeff every time he calls. I think sometimes Jeff gets a kick out of toying with her hopes. She says she calls him more often than he calls her. Denise is confident that she will return home soon. She also tries to minimize potential rivals. It was rumored that, of all people, Marva had been spotted making secret late-night visits to Jeff. But I know that's not true because the person she goes to is me. As for Mark, well, when the truth came out, he lost the respect of many women. Yes, he still has fans, but this is far from the class it was before. When their mutual friends found out about what had happened, many began to avoid him. Now his environment leaves much to be desired. Sometimes the people you hang out with can either lift you up or bring you down. This is the Profit program. The best DJ Top Rock is in touch, who today is replacing Dr. Jones Allen. Call us and tell us what's on your mind. Are you in touch with the Profit, What's on Your Mind listener? Top Rock, this is Jeff from the Northwest Side. Hey Jeff, what's up, man? Well, I don't have a question or problem for the Prophets right now. I just thought you might be interested in hearing the continuation of the story you told about in one of the programs earlier this year. Oh, really? Well, maybe you'll call tomorrow morning and tell me the continuation. No, I don't think so, Rock, because the continuation of this story is not funny at all. Sounds serious. Okay, what passage are we talking about? About where the question was asked, which of your companion's partners would you most like to sleep with? Oh yeah, it was a cool show. We couldn't stop laughing all day. Yes, I missed the original broadcast because I was away, but Mark heard it, and then I recorded the best moments last week. The best call was from Denise on the Northwest Side, the one who said that she would like to be with her man's best friend Mark. Yes, I remember her. She was very lively. We had a lot of fun then. What's the continuation? Well, Denise's husband didn't hear that broadcast because he was on a business trip, but Mark heard it, and they started dating. What? Come on. Yes, it was. It lasted about 4, almost 5 months. Oh no, buddy. Tell me it's a joke. No, they would still be hanging out if I hadn't caught them. Did you catch them? Pause on air, let me guess. Are you a husband? Right the first time. Oh man, I'm sorry this happened to you. I hope you don't blame us for this. This episode was never intended to be anything more than harmless fun. I get it, man. I'm not trying to blame anyone. Damn, I laughed my head off until I heard Denise. My soon-to-be ex-wife and my ex-best friend both had the choice not to do what they did. I just wanted to send a message to all those would-be comedians who hide behind freedom of speech when they start making dirty jokes. Words have power, and power carries consequences. Freedom of speech does not absolve you from responsibility or consequences for its misuse. Jeff, man, I'm so sorry this happened to you. It's a pity that I can't help you with anything. You've already helped, Rock. The rebroadcast helped me catch them. I just thought you might like to know the rest of the story. Okay, I have to go. Take care of yourself. Hey, how are you? Sam is with you. Samuel Sanders is the owner, chef, consummate bartender, and, when needed, dishwasher at Midnight Bar and Grill. A person in my position hears all kinds of stories about all kinds of things. Some sound plausible, others sound like, oh well, that can't be true. However, tonight I have a friend who has agreed to come by and tell his story. Let me warn you right away, this is a bittersweet story, but it's better to let him tell it himself. Come on in, Scott, tell people your story. Thanks, Sam. I think for the sake of this story, I should simplify things. My name is Scott Caldwell, and this story began about 3 years ago. I met a girl named Nellie Braden. Nell was and remains a stunning beauty. Her height is 65 meters, her eyes are dark, almond-shaped, with thick eyelashes. She wears her hair just below her shoulders. She doesn't have very wide hips, even after giving birth to Audra Marie. However, her ass fills her skirts and trousers in such a way that it is impossible not to pay attention. Her breasts were also eye-catching, although they were not particularly large, size 2 or 3, depending on the brand of bra. I've always admired her smooth, peanut butter-colored skin. We met through my best friend at the time, Willie Lone, aka Tag. He was given this nickname before the phrase thug life came into fashion, but he tried to live the lifestyle accordingly. His reputation was that of a tough guy, almost a gangster, who played with every woman he came near. But for me, he was a comrade in life, with whom I would go to war shoulder to shoulder, so it seemed to me then. They say keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Well, you will soon understand everything yourself. Nell and I quickly became inseparable. She tried to stick to what Michael Baston or Ileana Van Zandt advocated. How about keep a guy away from sex for 90 days to see if he's serious? I calmly endured 90 days, but on the 92nd I asked her where, in her opinion, our relationship was moving deeper or on the surface. She replied that she wanted to go deep, very deep. Long story short, she agreed to have sex that night, and there was no turning back for me. My friend and her acquaintance tried to warn me that in those first 90 days, I should have looked into her assets and liabilities. I thought I had done it, but later realized how wrong I was. As far as I know, the relationship was smooth. Hell, I didn't even falter when she told me 6 months later that she was 2 months pregnant. I decided that I was going to make this relationship permanent anyway, so no big deal. Audra Marie was, and still is, the sweetest little girl you could ever want to meet. Slightly lighter than her mother, she had the same deep dark brown eyes, but with a sparkle that only comes from innocence. She was born with a head full of hair, which delighted her relatives. They said a head full of hair was a good sign, which I have no idea about. Anyway, Nell made us wait 10 weeks instead of the usual 6 as her doctor ordered before having sex again. I noticed changes in her body, but decided that it was all because of the child. At first, Nell was quite strict in her sexual habits. She really liked it, she really wanted it, but only in certain cases. No perverted things. I guess I should have suspected something because I repeatedly let her use the baby as an excuse. This would be good, but most of the time the child was in his mother's house. I worked hard, concentrating on when I would give her an engagement ring and formally ask her to marry me. I wanted the ring to be fully paid for when I put it on her finger. It took me the better part of 6 months, but the ring was finally in my coat pocket. I decided that we would have a romantic dinner at a local restaurant with a few of our friends, and I would pop the question to them. It worked like a miracle. The girls cried and the guys were stunned. She admitted that I was wonderful. We decided to move the date to a year later to focus on other things. It was 3 months of waiting before I revealed the truth. Shortly after the baby was born, Nell gave me a set of keys. One was in her apartment, the other was in her car. Nell thought that she wanted me to be able to get into her apartment if a situation arose with the baby, such as having to pick her up or fetch something for her. I thought this was not necessary because the child usually stayed with Nell's mother. I rarely used them, but Nell wanted me to have them just in case. Looking back, I'm sure she wouldn't have done it if she had known what could happen. I decided to surprise Nell with dinner on Friday. I went to our favorite restaurant and bought her favorite dishes. I also bought some good wine and her favorite scent, Häagen-Dazs. I went to Nell's apartment and entered. She would be home from work in a few hours, and I wanted the food to be ready to heat up when she arrived. I put everything back in place and put the ice cream in the freezer and the wine in the refrigerator. As I turned to start preparing the dish, I heard it. My heart jumped and my blood ran cold as I thought that I had been exposed for the first time. I'm sure the neighbors in the house across the street heard Nell having sex. I was stunned. I crept into her bedroom and looked through the crack of the door. What I saw completely disappointed me. There, on the bed where we made love, was Nell and, for now, my so-called best friend Willie Lones. My heart was breaking into pieces. All this time Nellie was playing love with Tag. She took me for a fool during those 90 days, but gave away the pleasure to Willie. She slept with him just 2 weeks after the baby was born. How could she say she loved me and yet betray me like that? Suddenly, my thoughts were interrupted when Nellie ran cheerfully into the bedroom again. I've seen enough. Returning to the kitchen, I looked at the food I had bought. Then he threw everything into the trash can. The smell of food began to permeate the kitchen, so I took the ice cream out of the freezer, turned it upside down, and left it in the sink. I was almost about to pour the wine, but changed my mind. Finally, I took out my wallet and took out 2 photographs. One was with Nellie, the other with Tag and me. I took the keys to her apartment and car from the keychain. He put the car key on the dining table, and the apartment key pierced both photographs and left them next to each other. Then I took my wine and quietly left. I myself was completely destroyed. I drove around the city for several hours before returning home. During this trip, my pain turned to anger. Anger demanded some kind of retribution. Willie, or Tag as he preferred to be called, would pay in full with the loss of my friendship. He will need me much faster than he will need me. When the other guys find out the whole truth, a scandal will break out and many will turn away from him. Willie will be very worried when it is revealed that he betrayed his best friend. No, he will pay the price. But Miss Nellie Braden needs to be taught a lesson. I wondered how they would both react if they found what I left behind. How I wish I had a video camera to record what I saw. Then I could take her to court and get full custody of Audra Marie. It would break her. But since I didn't have a camera, I began to develop another plan. I was still working out the details when I finally entered my apartment. My answering machine was full of messages from Nellie begging me to call back. I deleted all messages and continued to ignore calls. I knew exactly how I would take revenge on Nellie. I opened my planner and found a crumpled old piece of paper. It had a special phone number on it that I never thought I would ever dial. This number belonged to a certain person whom Nellie not only respected, but was also afraid of. We talked a few times when we crossed paths in different places and always had a good time. I never developed this relationship because I was faithful to Nellie. Nellie always got irritated when she saw me interact with her, and after that evening, Nellie and I usually had great sex. Apparently, she especially tried to attract my attention back to her. Well, if she thought I'd just sit back and suffer like some pathetic weakling, she was sorely mistaken. I dialed the number. Hello? Hello, Pam Faulkner? Yes, who is it? This is Scott. Scott? Scott Caldwell? Yes, it's me. Hey, Scott, to what do I owe this pleasure? How are you? Fine. Look, I know this is unexpected, but are you busy tonight? No, I'm just relaxing. And what? I thought maybe we'd go out to dinner and then to a show at the Ensemble Theater. Interesting. Well, yes, with pleasure. When will we meet? It's about 7:30. The performance starts at 8. I'll pick you up at 7:20. We'll go to a show, then to a late dinner, or maybe we'll go to a club to dance. Hey, sounds great. But I shouldn't dress up too much, right? Oh, please no, just wear casual clothes. You already look gorgeous in any outfit. Ha ha ha. It's cute, corny, but cute. Thank you. Okay, I'll try to be more original. I'll be with you at 7:20. I'll be ready. At 7:20, I stood at her door, more nervous than ever. If you saw Pam, you'd understand. She opened the door, and even in casual clothes, she looked stunning. Slightly taller than Nellie's 68 meters, with curves that made Nellie look ridiculous. She reminded me of a young Chaka Khan from the days when she still sang in the group Rufus. Fair skin, large bright brown eyes, a wide smile, framed by long thick hair that reached her shoulder blades. When I first met her, I was struck not only by her beauty, but also by her self-confidence. She was very smart, knew how to treat men, and could reject more guys in a week than other women could in 3 months. Her strength and intelligence have always attracted me. We could talk for hours about everything in the world. I never considered myself a contender for her attention, so I didn't try to impress her. I think that's what allowed us to have so much fun. The evening went just great. The performance was amazing, and the late dinner was a great success. Pam was relaxed and very gentle. Things got heated when we arrived at the club. This woman lit up so much that she attracted the gaze of many men who received reprimands from their girlfriends for staring at her breasts and hips. But she focused all her attention on me, which simply inspired me. However, I almost lost my composure when the slow dance started. I hesitated at first when the music changed and some other guy tried to ask her out. She brushed him off sharply. The next thing I knew, she came up to me and pressed herself against me, putting her arm around my shoulders, teasing me for not letting her get away properly. She laid her head on my shoulder, and I felt her hot breath on my neck. I tried to dance a little, pressing myself against her, and was amazed when she responded in kind. When the music ended, I held her by the waist, and she put her arm around my shoulders, and we slowly left the club. The rest of the night passed too quickly, and now I was walking her to the door of her apartment. Thank you for a wonderful evening, Scott. I rarely go out. Thank you for calling. I really enjoyed it too, Pam. It's worth doing again. She kissed me lightly on the lips and unlocked the door to her apartment. She opened it just enough to go inside and closed it behind her. I stood there thinking about how well the evening had gone, and then the door opened slightly again. Not wide, but enough to make it clear that it is not locked. My instinct told me that this was a clear signal to go in and continue, but another part of me, a more reserved one, said that it would be better to just knock so that she would come back and lock the door. I knocked, no answer. I thought maybe I'll just pop in and call her to close the door. I carefully opened the door and called. Pam. Well, you finally got the hint, I heard her say. What? Well, come in and close my door. I was confused, but I didn't want to seem stupid. I closed and locked the door. She motioned for me to come and sit on the sofa next to her. When I approached, I saw 2 glasses of wine on the table. Now tell me what happened. What are you talking about? Listen, Scott, I really like you, but I'm not stupid. I know that you wouldn't invite me to such a wonderful evening just like that. Something happened. Come on, spit it out. Pam, really, You're just a terrible liar. Besides, I think you owe me something. What? Yes, you owe me. You need to explain to me why you suddenly asked me on a date, especially since the last time we spoke, you were planning to propose. She looked me seriously in the eyes. I was stunned. Gradually, I began to tell her everything I saw and heard. Surprisingly, the more details I provided, the more she demanded them. Towards the end of my story, she sat silently for several minutes, then slowly shook her head. Oh, Scott, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. What is Nellie thinking about? If she doesn't want to be with you, why doesn't she just leave, leaving you the opportunity to move on? Sleeping with Tag, this guy who has the skills but doesn't have the courage to use them. I didn't know you knew Willie Lone. Tag? Oh yes, I turned him off a few years ago. He tried to flirt with me, but I told him to his face that he was not my type. When he realized that nothing would work out, he began to insult me in public. I had to reprimand him in full. I thought Nellie had better taste. The fact that she accepted your proposal knowing she was having an affair with Tag is disgusting. Are you going to punch him in the face? Only if he tries to hurt me or gets in my way. I could have caught them both, but I decided to leave them to their own devices. They now know it's over, and that's enough for me. Thank you, Pam, for listening to me. I started to get up to leave. I kept you late. I have to go. Everything is fine. Listen, maybe you can stay with me for the night? Really, Pam, I don't. Look, I don't think you should be alone on a night like this. You'll spend the night here and go home in the morning. She leaned towards me, holding my hands in hers, and I was surprised at how warm they were. Then she said words that shocked me. Besides, I've been waiting for this for a long time. What exactly? This one. She kissed me softly but deeply on the lips. We continued kissing for a long time. Oh, Scott, I've been dreaming about this since our second meeting. I hope it was worth the wait. I don't know, I guess I'll have to check. We had sex. Pam looked up and smiled at me. Damn, Scott, you did it perfectly, just like I knew it would. Pam, I know I've never been with someone like me, especially not after Nellie. I hope it was a decent summary. Resume? For what? Look, Scott, we're close enough not to play games. I wanted you from the moment we truly met. You are a good person, and such people are hard to find. You are smart, hardworking, kind, generous, love to laugh, and enjoy life. Oh yes, and you love making love. Many women have been eyeing you for a long time. I could have slept with anyone, especially someone like Tag, but you respected your relationship with Nellie, and I respected that. Now that Nellie is in the past, I want you to know who you'll be dealing with. At first I was going to wait, but I waited too long for some other bitch to beat me to it. So this is my application. What's your answer? To say that I was stunned is an understatement. In the space of just 12 hours, I went from being completely destroyed over the woman I loved to having the most beautiful and incredible woman I knew actually proposed to me. Oh, damn woman, sold. I finally got home around noon on Saturday. To my surprise, Nellie was sitting on my sofa. Scott, where have you been? I've been trying to call you all night. We need to talk. I would ask how you got in, but I remember that you have a key. You can keep him, because after today, he won't go near these locks anymore. Scott, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that you found out about everything like this. I never meant to hurt you. Give me back my ring, Miss Braden. Nellie looked like a wounded child as she gave me her wedding ring. Thank you. You can leave now. What? No, Scott, you can't just kick me out. We need to talk. We have a child. Just then Pam came through the door. Scott, I think I forgot my phone at home. Oops. Nellie, what are you doing here? Nellie looked at Pam with her jaw dropped, as if she had seen a ghost. What is she doing here? What she does here is no longer your concern, Nellie. Goodbye. Oh no, honey, you won't get rid of me that easily. No matter how much you try to involve this girlfriend of yours in our business, I am still the mother of your child. Miss Charming here will have to come to terms with the fact that I will be in your life. Pam didn't flinch and calmly said to me, Scott, honey, I know you're into Audra Marie, but have you ever taken a DNA test? No, I didn't. Considering how long she and Tag have been secretly dating, wouldn't it be wise to do one, just in case? What? Who the hell are you to doubt? Of course Scott is the father. It's obvious from her. I decided to intervene to prevent them from getting into a fight. Enough both. Miss Braden, I will pay for the DNA test myself. Nellie's face turned purple with rage. I don't need a damn DNA test. I know who the father is. He signed the birth certificate. If you think that you can avoid responsibility for your child, you are deeply mistaken. I will sue you so quickly that you won't even have time to blink an eye. If you want a trial, go ahead. We can do the DNA test now or the judge orders. I don't care. I didn't shout or get angry. I just looked her straight in the eyes. My confidence clearly scared her. Okay, then do your damn test. I don't care. Now I gave vent to my anger. Listen here, Miss Braden. If the test shows that she is my daughter, I will take care of her. You know me well enough to understand this. But if Audra is not mine, you will remove my name from the birth certificate and get out of my life once and for all. Now get lost. In the weeks that followed, I encountered a storm of rumors and speculation. Nellie tried to ensure that her version of events, without mentioning Tag, of course, spread as widely as possible. Her mother, brothers, our mutual friends and relatives all seemed to take her side. Willie kept a low profile, studiously avoiding attention. They tried to destroy my reputation. I might have snapped and said something rude to them, all if it weren't for the support of Pam, who stayed by my side and helped me hold on. When the DNA test results were ready, I made copies for Nellie and her family, sealed them in envelopes, and went with Pam and a few friends to Nellie's mother to reveal the results in front of everyone. Pam was literally seething with curiosity, but I kept her from reading the results prematurely. When we entered the house, Nellie's family and friends were in full combat readiness. I was surrounded by shouts about how I could just abandon my obligations after so many years. I heard everything from the fact that, once a scoundrel, always a scoundrel, to accusations that I succumbed to the influence of someone else's woman. Nellie's brother was ready to attack me, and her friends tried to attack Pam, considering her the reason for the breakup. I was shocked that no one knew the whole truth. I approached Nellie's mother, handed her an envelope and the laboratory's phone number so that she could verify the authenticity of the results. We opened the envelopes at the same time. What started out as a potential episode of the Jerry Springer Show or Maury suddenly turned into deafening silence. I read the results, but let Nellie's mother read them out loud. Audra Marie was not my daughter. Nellie's brother couldn't believe it and called the laboratory number himself. He was completely humiliated when the results were confirmed to be genuine. Nellie sat as if struck by thunder. I didn't tell her, I told you so, and I didn't let Pam do it either. I knew that Nellie most likely suspected the truth. I stated that I was going to see a lawyer to remove my name from the birth certificate. And before I left, I struck one last blow. I paid for this test out of my own pocket. You might have to go on Maury's show to get Willie to turn in his. I turned around and never looked back. Pam and I got married and had 2 children of our own. Nellie actually had to drag Willie to Maury's show to prove his paternity. By that point, however, all she wanted from him was child support. Out of this whole situation, the only one I truly felt sorry for was Audra Marie. Here is an interesting continuation of the stories from the bar. Midnight fell over Midnight Bar and Grill, and the air seemed thick with memories, understatements, and regrets. Samuel Sanders, the bartender, watched it all, knowing that every story in this bar was always missing one final chapter. Sam went back to the microphone in the corner of the bar, where an old, slightly battered record hung on a brass hook. She was once a symbol of good times and those nights when music and stories became inseparable. You know what's strange about these stories? Sam began with a smile, looking around at his guests. We hear about love, loss, betrayal, and every time it seems to me that everything could have gone differently if the characters had noticed the signs a little earlier. Then his gaze fell on Jeff, who was sitting in the far corner of the bar, lost in thought, photographs in his hands. Denise appeared, carefully walked inside, and sat down at the table next to him, without disturbing his thoughts. She knew that this evening would be their last meeting. They spoke quietly, and although their faces remained tense, there was a gleam of hope for forgiveness in their eyes. Suddenly, the ancient bell that hung at the door of the bar rang. Mark, Jeff's former best friend, walked in. He approached, clearly aware that the evening silence would be shaken if he said something. But to everyone's surprise, he walked straight to the bar, sat down, and ordered a double whiskey, silently nodding to Jeff and Denise. No one knew that the day before, Mark had made an important decision, to leave the past behind. He moved to another city to start a new life. His arrival at the bar was his final act of atonement. And now for one more final touch, Sam said, pouring whiskey for all 3. Sometimes forgiveness is not something we seek from others. It is something we must allow ourselves. Meanwhile, at the opposite end of the hall, Scott was sitting with Pam. They watched as the fading shadow of the past slowly dissolved into the midnight light of the bar. Their children were sleeping soundly at home, and Scott realized that he was grateful to fate for the day when he decided to change. Pam tugged lightly on his sleeve and smiled. This place seems to have its own magic, huh? Scott, holding her hand tightly, replied, Magic is when you meet someone who will warm your heart even in the coldest storm, and everyone who comes here has a chance for their own new dawn. The sounds of a saxophone filled the space, and Sam, taking the microphone again, added with a slight smile. As for Phoebe and her story, well, her path to happiness is not over yet. However, this is a completely different chapter, which I may tell you next time. See you soon, friends. May your hearts find their peace, and the Midnight Bar will always be a place where you can hear the music of life beating. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Well, her path to happiness is not over yet. However, this is a completely different chapter, which I may tell you next time. See you soon, friends. May your hearts find their peace, and the Midnight Bar will always be a place where you can hear the music of life beating. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.